Hey, what's up guys? Caleb here from Aylsworth Razors. Welcome back to the channel. Got a bit of a different sort of special shave video going on today. The first difference you might notice is the dome here, which if you didn't happen to catch Thursday's bbs.live, just last Thursday, I randomly hopped on the live show and shaved my head for the first time using a DE razor with the Drakkant razor. And I did that in order to win this awesome Trotter Handcrafts brush that was generously donated by Melly Mel. So if you didn't check it out, you might want to catch that because it was a fun time. The other different thing that I'm going to be doing today is rather than doing like a first impressions or a review of a soap or anything like that, this is actually the first shave video that I'm going to be doing since the launch of the Drakkant, which has gone very well so far. But those of you who've been following the channel or who are familiar with the Drakkant razor will know that this the top cap here, or not just the cap, but the overall shave angle and plane is a little bit unconventional. It's a 24-degree angle, which is more similar to that of a Christopher Bradley razor by Karve or of the Masamune razor by Tatara, as opposed to a traditional 30-degree angle like a Rockwell 6S or a Mulla or Merkur or something of that nature. And for that reason, I have gotten a few messages of people kind of who are curious and wondering, you know, what's the best shave technique or how's the best way to dial in the angle to get the most optimum shaves out of the razor. And so I thought I would go ahead and do a video and just talk about the differences between a 24-degree angled razor versus a traditional razor. And I'm also going to be using Holy Cow Rebel soap and my trusty Trafalgar T3, just because these are trusted products of mine. But basically, as we get started here, there are really only going to be two major differences between a traditional 30-degree cutting angle and a more shallower 24-degree angle, like the Tatara, Drakkant, and Christopher Bradley. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. So the first thing that you'll note between a more traditional razor and one with a shallower cap, like the Drakkant, is the angle of 30 degrees or 24 degrees. Now that angle that's being described is describing the angle of the blade relative to the top cap, but that also affects the angle of the blade relative to the handle. So in a more traditional razor, the handle is going to be more aligned with the direction of the pull, the way that you pull the blade across your face. With a shallower cap, the handle is going to be kind of levered out a little bit more. That can feel a little bit awkward at first, especially if you have a lot of muscle memory from a more traditional angled razor. But once you get it dialed in, I've actually found that it makes it easier to maneuver in some of the tighter and more challenging areas. Especially with a slightly longer handle, like a 3.5 incher like this one, or even a 4 incher, then it can really start to come into play with how easy it is to kind of adjust and swivel the blade angle as you're cutting and moving around complex planes, like the jawline here, or if you're going against the grain, which we'll do later, then that maneuverability really comes into play. And as you can see, it's only a 5-degree difference, so we're not talking about a huge difference. I still mostly have the handle aligned with the direction that I'm pulling in. It's just tilted out slightly relative to or compared to a more traditional razor. Now we're going to do the overlander on the other side. And that brings me to the second point. The major difference is the way that you derive the cutting plane. So with more traditional razors, you tend to derive the cutting plane from riding along the safety bar a little bit more. the safety bars tend to kind of stick out a little bit and align themselves with the cutting plane that is established by the top cap. And so the way to find that cutting plane is to actually kind of lean on the safety bar a little bit. And then sort of just kind of adjust or tilt it towards the top cap. Until you feel the blade catch. Whereas with a more unconventional 24-degree angle, you do the opposite. You don't really ride the bar so much as you set the razor down, or rather, you don't really ride the top cap so much as you do set it down, leaning a little bit towards the top cap, and then tilt it towards the safety bar until the cutting plane is kind of, or rather the razor head is resting almost evenly across the cutting plane. And if you do it that way, you will immediately sort of find that optimal cutting angle, starting with the cap and then leaning towards the cutting plane, because you'll feel, again, the feedback. You'll feel the blade begin cutting into the hair. Going against the grain, same sort of thing. It can be a little bit trickier sometimes to find that angle, again, because the tendency from a traditional razor is to hold the razor handle a little more vertically, and you do have to sort of kind of tilt it outwards a little bit to find that optimal cutting plane. But once you get that muscle memory down, and in particular, going against the grain under the jaw and neck here, at least for me, I find that there's a good deal more control than the traditional angled razors, because again, pointing the handle this way can get a little bit tricky, whereas having it out keeps it out of the way. And I actually find it's a little bit easier coming up and around over the jaw as well. The upper lip area is always fun against the grain. I always buff in this area. For some reason, I can never manage to do like longer strokes. It's a short area. There's not a lot of room to do longer strokes. But I always find that a series of successive shorter strokes here gets me that nice BBS. Basically just buffing a bit in the area will get me that nice BBS. And usually avoid weepers or irritation. I don't do a whole lot differently with the more traditional angled razor for this either. It's really just the handle's pointed a bit more vertically as I'm doing these strokes. Again, some buffing on the upper lip there. This is the area where the more traditionally angled razors actually I find to be particularly more tricky. Again, the angle of the handle, the riding of the safety bar, it's less optimal for these against the grain strokes. All right, let's get that Rebelle splash going. For those of you who have not used Holy Cow Rebelle, highly recommend it. Holy Cow is one of my favorite bases. Very, very, very easy to lather, very smooth, very creamy. Rebelle is just a great, classic, simple sort of masculine fragrance. Leather, got some musk in there, some amber. It's just like a straight up masculine classic fragrance. Very leather forward, which I love because I love the smell of leather. So that's it for the shave. I hope you liked kind of my little description of the differences between more shallower capped razors like the Christopher Bradley and the Drakkant, and more steeper capped razors or traditional angled razors like the Rockwell 6S and the Overlander. If you had anything to add to that, please feel free to leave it in the comments. If you like this kind of stuff, please let me know. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Definitely hit the like button if you liked it. I've been Caleb from Aylsworth Razors, and thank you for watching. I appreciate you. Have yourself a fantastic week.